I will defend her. Defend her.
I will defend her. The words sounded reckless even to Leonard Hale's own ears, the kind of promise a broken man should never make. Once, he had stood in courtrooms as a respected attorney. Now he swept their corridors after midnight, invisible to the same judges who once praised him. But when Celeste Marlowe, the tech genius the world was eager to destroy, sat across from him with fear disguised as composure, something buried inside him reawakened. She wasn't just a client. She was the spark that ignited the ashes of a life the world thought was dead. What Leonard didn't know was that by speaking those 4 words, he reopened a battlefield he thought he escaped years ago. The empire that crushed him, the same forces that stole his career, sanity, and future, heard his declaration and stirred. They had erased him once. They planned to do it again. But this time Leonard wasn't alone. His estranged daughter, Nadia, walked back into his life armed with evidence that could topple giants. Together with Celeste, they faced break-ins, betrayal, mercenary attacks, and conspiracies laced with oil and blood. That night, when he vowed to defend her, Leonard didn't just step back into the law. He stepped into war. And the janitor the world dismissed became the weapon they never saw coming. Because some battles aren't fought for victory. They're fought for redemption. But before we dive into what happens next, I'd love to know, where are you tuning in from today? Drop your country in the comment below and please like the video. Thank you. Now let's continue. Leonard Hale never imagined that sweeping courtroom floors at midnight would one day lead him back into the halls where he once stood confidently as an attorney. Life had an odd way of throwing people into circles, breaking them, crushing them, then whispering whether they would rise again. 15 years ago, Leonard was a rising lawyer, brilliant, calm, uncorrupted, until a corporate empire buried him under lies so deep that even truth suffocated beneath them. They took his license, reputation, savings, and almost his mind. Since then, Leonard lived quietly in a tiny Queens apartment, embracing anonymity the way wounded animals hide in shadows. But fate didn't forget him. It merely waited. The turning point arrived in the most unlikely way. When the wealthy tech genius Celeste Marlowe walked into his life, accused of crimes she never committed. Leonard didn't know then that stepping forward to defend her would reopen an old battlefield, the same network that ruined him. Celeste's innovation was unlike anything the world had seen, computing crossed with energy sequencing, but she lacked the knowledge of how dangerous that made her. Her breakthrough could eliminate fossil fuels within 2 decades. To her, that meant progress. To trillion-dollar oil dynasties, that meant extinction. And extinction breeds violence. Enter Nadia Hale, Leonard's estranged daughter. Brilliant, determined, and freshly fired after digging too deeply into records she wasn't meant to see. She arrived one afternoon with a sleek laptop, confidence in her walk, and sorrow in her gaze. A young woman who built herself without her father's guidance yet still gravitated toward him when truth demanded it. She came quietly, but her findings detonated in their world. Buried behind shell companies, offshore accounts, and board proxies was Titan Global Energy, the same corporation that destroyed Leonard long ago. They weren't defending themselves against Celeste. They were erasing threats the way history erases truths. Silently, systematically, permanently. Nadia showed evidence of political links, defense contractors, legal manipulation. Even Celeste's law firm was indirectly controlled by Titan's subsidiaries. Celeste's invention wasn't just a legal dispute. It threatened an empire layered in oil and blood. Their enemies weren't businessmen. They were architects of power. First came the warnings. A break-in at Leonard's apartment where nothing was stolen but everything was shattered, ripped open, violated. Their message wasn't theft. It was surveillance. We know where you sleep. Then Nadia's devices were hacked. Then Celeste's car was nearly rammed off the road. The storm had begun. Celeste demanded Leonard and Nadia move into her fortified estate. Leonard resisted. He didn't want charity, but safety outweighed pride, and soon father and daughter moved into a guest house larger than anywhere they had lived. There something unexpected happened. Celeste and Leonard, 2 souls from opposite worlds, began respecting each other not as client and defender, but as equals forged through hardship. The walls between billionaire and broken man thinned. But peace was temporary. The night everything changed arrived at 2 a.m., when Celeste's top executive, Harper Linden, stumbled to the mansion gate. Pale, terrified, desperate, confessing betrayal. She had been forced to spy for Titan, blackmailed with an old crime they dug up from her past. But fear outweighed deceit now. They planned to kill Celeste. Harper handed over Titan's CEO Adrian Coran's stolen phone, full of messages, orders, bribery receipts, corporate conspiracy, a device powerful enough to destroy the empire or bury them with it. They backed up the data just in time and smuggled Harper to safety. Titan struck before dawn. Mercenaries stormed Celeste's estate, trained, silent, ruthless. Nadia, Leonard, and Celeste were sealed in a hidden panic room while the guards fought and fell above them. Cameras showed explosions being set at the reinforced basement door. Death seconds away. But fate or justice intervened. SWAT stormed the grounds. Titan's hit team retreated like shadows dissolving in first light. Federal agents swept in, seizing Coran, Titan executives, lawyers, and officials entangled in the conspiracy. Harper testified. The stolen data became the sword that sliced through Titan's armor. The courtroom transformed. Instead of ridicule, Leonard received respect. Celeste was declared innocent. Titan's structure collapsed. After months of healing and rebuilding, Celeste funded a justice foundation, enabling Leonard and Nadia to open Hale and Hale Law, defending the unheard. What grew between Leonard and Celeste wasn't romance born of convenience, but of battles fought side by side. She acknowledged him first, gently, vulnerably, confessing that wealth never gave her what he embodied: integrity, loyalty, compassion. For the first time since Leonard's wife died, his heart opened, cautiously, painfully, and Celeste stepped into that space with patience, not demand. Their journey became a reminder that defeat isn't death, betrayal isn't final, and justice is rarely glamorous. Sometimes it wears janitor gloves instead of designer suits. People whispered whether Leonard would choose security or sacrifice, but they underestimated him. He wasn't reborn to hide again. He was reborn to defend others. The office smelled faintly of new paint and hope when Leonard Hale first walked into Hale and Hale Law. The walls were bare, the reception desk unassembled, and half the wiring was still exposed. But to Leonard, this was a cathedral. A place where voices long ignored would finally be heard. Nadia followed behind him, holding her new law textbooks like weapons she wasn't yet trained to wield. She had enrolled in law school after witnessing the corruption, realizing that truth without articulation is powerless. Now she studied law not to escape her past, but to avenge it. Their sign, polished and mounted on Fifth Avenue brick, glowed beneath morning light. Hale and Hale Civil Rights and Justice Advocacy. For Leonard, it was more than a name. It was redemption engraved on stone. "Think we can actually run this place?" Nadia asked as she turned slowly, absorbing the empty rooms that would soon hold stories of struggle, fear, and justice. Leonard smiled, the kind of smile he had forgotten he could make. "We already have," he replied. "3 clients are waiting in the lobby tomorrow, remember?" Nadia nodded, cheeks brightening with disbelief. Their first case. People who had been turned away by every lawyer who saw no profit in defending them. Cases of retaliation, discrimination, eviction. Small injustices ignored because the victims had no money. Leonard didn't need a retainer. He needed truth. Celeste Marlowe arrived moments later, carrying champagne, elegant even in simplicity. She crossed the uncarpeted floor, her heels echoing softly. Her presence carrying warmth despite the battles etched into her eyes. "I thought this moment deserved celebration," she said gently. Nadia saw something she had never witnessed in her father. The stiffness in his shoulders eased when Celeste stood near him. "I'll search for glasses," Nadia declared, slipping away quickly, leaving the two alone. They stood side by side in the unpainted office, sunlight cutting across their faces, dust hanging like glitter. Celeste spoke first, her voice nearly a whisper. "I never truly thanked you for believing in me when the world turned its back." Leonard turned to her, searching for words. You gave me something I thought had died, he said softly. A purpose. Since Celeste's acquittal, they had appeared in press conferences and advocacy meetings, shoulder to shoulder, bonded not by convenience but combat. Their conversations lingered longer. Their silences grew comfortable. Celeste finally dared what she had held back. I know our lives are worlds apart, she whispered. People will talk. They will dissect my choices, your history, our differences. She paused, eyes glistening. But I've learned something, the world doesn't matter. People's opinions don't matter. What matters is finding someone who understands you, stands with you, makes you stronger. She exhaled like someone leaping without knowing if ground existed below. And I found that person. Leonard felt his heart seize. Grief, gratitude, and fear tangled as memories of his wife resurfaced. Sarah's death had left parts of him buried. Convinced love was a chapter he had finished long ago. I had one great love in my youth, Leonard admitted. I believed that was all life would give me. Celeste stepped closer, lifting his hand. Her soft palm meeting the roughness of a man who scrubbed floors and rebuilt dignity with his own labor. What if life allows more than one beginning, she asked. Leonard didn't answer with words. He leaned in, carefully, reverently, and kissed her. No parade. No film score. Just two people who survived storms finding shelter in each other. Behind them, Nadia yelled, "We don't have glasses." Their laughter broke the intensity, a reminder that life doesn't pause for emotion. Come on, Celeste said, intertwining her hand with Leonard's. Let's show your daughter her new office. Tonight the three of us will celebrate. Leonard nodded, pausing as he looked once more at the sign on the wall. Second chance. No, a second life. Months passed, and Hale became more than a law practice. It became a refuge. Journalists wrote about Leonard as the janitor who became justice. Clients arrived from states away. People denied fair trials. Workers threatened for speaking against corporations. Whistleblowers abandoned by the very institutions designed to protect them. Celeste's Justice Fund quietly bankrolled dozens of such cases across the country. She didn't want publicity, she wanted transformation. Leonard didn't campaign for fame. He became a symbol of quiet rebellion. Nadia thrived too, absorbing law with a hunger that professors rarely saw. She wasn't just trying to graduate, she was preparing for war. The next morning, as Samuel walked Mia to school, he watched her adjust her backpack straps with the seriousness of someone going to war. He wondered how a child could learn resilience so early. When she waved goodbye, he promised silently that he'd never let her see him fall apart again. Back home, he showered, shaved, and put on a suit he hadn't worn in years. It didn't fit like it used to, a little tight, a little old, but something about wearing it reminded him of the man he had buried. He sat at the kitchen counter, reviewing documents again, drafting strategies and rehearsing lines. He wasn't just preparing a case. He was reawakening muscle memory. Meanwhile, Veronica Lockridge sat alone at a cafe overlooking the city. She held her coffee cup but never drank from it. Her mind was everywhere, her company in ruins, her ideas stolen, and the media calling her a fraud. Her phone buzzed. Advisor. Lockridge Industries has officially lost 3 more investors. We may need to declare insolvency. She closed her eyes. Veronica. Not yet. She hung up and inhaled sharply. For years, she'd been the woman who solved problems others ran from. Now the world wanted her erased. But when she recalled the desperation in Samuel Rivera's eyes, the quiet fire he carried, she felt something flicker. Hope was an emotion she had forgotten she was allowed to feel. That evening, Samuel went to a small legal workshop at the community center. His first step back into a professional world that no longer recognized him. As he entered, people glanced at him, some with polite nods, others with faint curiosity. A retired judge named Harold Finch, who was volunteering, paused mid-sentence. Judge Finch. Samuel Rivera. I thought you vanished. The room turned. Samuel gave a soft smile. Samuel. I'm still here. Finch studied him a moment, then nodded. Judge Finch. Good. Because this world needs fighters more than ever. The comment hit him. Fighters, not winners, not famous names, fighters. By the end of the workshop, Finch approached privately. Judge Finch. I heard you took a case no one else would. You know they'll crush you, yes. Samuel. Maybe. But someone has to stand up. Finch chuckled. Judge Finch. There you go, that's the Samuel I remember. Come by my office tomorrow. You'll need resources. Samuel was stunned. Samuel. You'd help me. Finch leaned closer. Judge Finch. I watched you fall. It's time someone helps you rise. 3 days later, Samuel met Veronica in a quiet office space he rented with the last of his savings. The table was second-hand, the chairs squeaked, but the energy in the room was sharper than any polished conference room. Veronica looked around. Veronica. This is where the comeback begins. Samuel smiled faintly. Samuel. Every empire starts somewhere. She studied him, more confident now, less broken. Veronica. You've changed in just a few days. Samuel. No. I remembered who I used to be. Veronica's eyes held something almost like respect. They spent the next several hours dissecting evidence. Samuel mapped the case like a strategist preparing for invasion. Arrows, timelines, witness breakdowns. Veronica watched him with fascination. Veronica. Why did you help me when everyone else ran? Samuel paused. Samuel. Because once, I needed someone to believe in me. No one did. I refused to be that person for someone else. For a second, Veronica's eyes softened, then hardened again. Veronica. Then we fight. News outlets began publishing rumors. Disgraced engineer hires unknown defense counsel. Lockridge prepares for final courtroom battle. Meanwhile, whispers ran through legal circles. Rivera. Isn't he that guy who was blacklisted? Why would she pick him? Someone must be desperate. Samuel heard them, but they no longer paralyzed him. Judge Finch helped him refine arguments. Old colleagues ignored him. A few journalists mocked him. His landlord warned him about rent. But each sneer, each doubt became fuel. 2 weeks later, Veronica stood before cameras at a press conference announcing her defense. Reporters shouted, "Why this lawyer? You're surely going to lose. Is this a stunt?" Veronica raised a hand. Veronica. My inventors don't come from castles. They come from garages, public school labs, and second-hand desks. So yes, I chose a lawyer who knows how it feels to be underestimated. Samuel stood beside her. Silent, steady. That night social media erupted. Some mocked her. Some admired her. Some pitied Samuel. Mia hugged him when he got home. Mia. I saw you on TV, Daddy. You looked brave. Samuel knelt, holding her face gently. Samuel. I'm fighting for someone who needs me. Just like I fight for you. Mia smiled. Mia. Then you're going to win. Her faith weighed more than any courtroom verdict. And so, the preparation deepened. Documents, late nights, witness training, surveillance digging. Judge Finch's contacts offered mentorship. Veronica's remaining scientists shared hidden files. Mia drew little pictures for his desk. Daddy strong. Daddy hero. He taped every one of them up. With each passing day, the man who once swept floors began to resemble the man who once shook courtrooms. On the eve of trial, Veronica looked at Samuel. Veronica. Are you afraid? Samuel took a long breath. Samuel. No. I'm alive again. One rainy evening in the office conference room, Leonard spoke to a group of young interns. Justice, he told them, isn't wearing a suit standing behind mahogany desks. He lifted his old janitor gloves from a drawer. Sometimes it scrubs floors. Sometimes it files papers no one believes matter. Justice doesn't always look powerful, but it refuses to kneel. His voice steadied, the voice of a man reborn. It doesn't matter where you start. It matters that you stand. The room fell silent. Interns stared as if witnessing something holy. Meanwhile, Celeste transformed her company's direction, turning her breakthrough into open-access research rather than private patents. If her technology threatened empires, then its defense wouldn't rest on secrecy but on democratization. She spoke at universities, encouraging young scientists to pursue innovation without fear. But peaceful times didn't last forever. The remnants of Titan's network, bleeding but not dead, continued to lurk. Old power structures rarely accept defeat. They retreat, reorganize, and strike again. One morning, Leonard received a plain envelope, no return address. Inside was a message scratched in red ink. You cut one head, but Hydra never dies. He burned the note silently, not telling Celeste or Nadia. He had learned something vital. Justice is not a victory lap. It is a lifelong war. But this time, Leonard wasn't fighting alone. He had Nadia, the daughter he almost lost but now walked beside him, fierce and unbroken. He had Celeste, love forged not in fantasy but in fire. And he had truth, something Titan had once buried, but could never again suffocate. Their victory wasn't an ending. It was the opening act of a movement no corporation could silence. The courthouse loomed like a cathedral of judgment, columns tall, flags unmoving, windows glinting in the morning sun. Cameras lined the entrance, microphones clustered like vultures hungry for a downfall. Samuel adjusted his tie. Veronica walked beside him, chin high even though her pulse pounded. Behind them, Mia waved from Judge Finch's car, whispering to herself, "Daddy's going to win." Inside, the smell of polished wood and old paper filled the air. Lawyers from the rival firm, the prestigious Hawthorne Group, watched Samuel with thin smiles. They remembered him. Most had once toasted his downfall. The lead attorney, Preston Vale, approached. "Preston. Rivera. I didn't expect to see your ghost back in these halls." Samuel offered a mild smile. "Samuel. I don't haunt places. I return to reclaim them." Preston's eyebrows lifted. He turned away with a chuckle, but something in his posture tightened. The judge entered. Reporters scribbled. Cameras clicked. The trial of Lockridge versus Titanium Energy Consortium had begun. Preston rose first. Smooth, confident, voice polished like silk. "Preston. The defendant built her empire on stolen innovation. Our clients simply defended their property. We are here to protect truth." Applause rippled through Titan's supporters in the gallery. Samuel sat calm, but Veronica's jaw clenched. Samuel stood. "Samuel. We are here because a brilliant woman discovered something powerful, too powerful for certain corporate monsters to control. So instead of competing, they buried her reputation. No theatrics, no anger. Just truth spoken like a doorway opening." Some reporters looked up. The judge leaned forward. The first day moved through evidence Titan presented. Emails, contracts, accusations. Their story seemed airtight. But Samuel remained unfazed. He let Preston build his castle of lies brick by brick. Because Samuel intended to set fire to it. Day 4. Samuel called Veronica's former research assistant to the stand. She was nervous, trembling. Preston smirked, ready to crush her credibility. But Samuel spoke gently, guiding her. "Samuel, you signed a non-disclosure order. Were you instructed to mislabel Veronica's original designs as Titan property?" The witness swallowed hard. "Witness. Yes." Gas flew. Cameras flashed. Preston stood shouting objections. The judge hammered her gavel. "Judge. Order. This testimony will stay on record." A hole appeared in Titan's narrative. Veronica's fingers dug into the table as if holding herself together. Titan brought expert witnesses, forged audit reports, manipulated timelines. Samuel dismantled each one. "So why does this document have metadata from Titan's server 2 months before your claimed acquisition date? If she stole your formula, why does your company's internal memo refer to it as acquired asset prior to litigation. He wasn't the broken man sweeping floors anymore. He was a tactician with fire in his veins. Even Preston began avoiding Samuel's gaze. Mid-trial, Titan attacks Samuel personally. On live television, they revealed recordings of his old scandal, manipulated clips designed to resurrect his humiliation. Reporters swarmed. Is Rivera still corrupt? Was his downfall justified after all? Should he even be allowed to practice? Samuel's knees buckled privately, but Mia hugged him that night. Mia. They're lying. I know they are. Veronica saw him shaken. For the first time, she touched his shoulder. Veronica. They fear you. That's why they attack. He nodded but barely slept. Judge Finch called him. Judge Finch. Pain can either be poison or fuel. You decide. Samuel whispered. Samuel. I choose fuel. He returned to court sharper than before. When Titan's chief executive, Roderick Wynne, took the stand, Samuel's strategy snapped tight. He walked slowly, voice low but sharp. Samuel. Mr. Wynne, do you recall signing this internal authorization? Wynne frowned. Samuel held up a document. One Finch helped authenticate. Wynne. It's a budget allocation. Samuel. Specifically for covert liquidation of Lockridge patents before litigation, correct? Silence. Wynne tried to protest, but Samuel pressed harder. Timeline, witnesses, email networks, hidden accounts. Wynne's composure cracked. Finally. Wynne. No further comment. Pandemonium erupted. Social media exploded. News networks replayed the crumble of Titan's CEO on loop. Veronica whispered. Veronica. You're not just winning, you're resurrecting yourself. Samuel exhaled. The gallery was packed. Crowds waited outside. Mia held her grandmother's hand, watching from the hallway screen. Samuel delivered closing arguments. Not theatrical, not poetic, just truth forged from wounds. Samuel. This case is about justice stolen from an inventor who refused to bow to power. But it is also about who we allow to define our legacy. Titan decided Ms. Lockridge's ideas were theirs because they had more money. Today, I ask you to remind them, truth cannot be bought. Silence fell like prayer. Preston's closing sounded forced. The jury vanished to deliberate. Hours dragged. Samuel paced quietly. Veronica stood statue still. Then the foreperson returned. Judge. We find in favor of the defendant, Veronica Lockridge. The courtroom erupted. Reporters rushed. Titan's lawyers fled. Veronica's knees buckled and Samuel caught her. She whispered. Veronica. You saved me. Samuel shook his head. Samuel. No. You refused to disappear. You saved yourself. But Mia ran into his arms moments later, shouting. You did it. And Samuel cried. Silently, buried in her tiny shoulder. Veronica reinstated her company, clearing debts and releasing research freely to prove she had nothing to hide. Samuel received calls from major firms begging him to join. He declined. Instead, he opened Rivera Advocacy Initiative, a legal force dedicated to defending the unseen, the underestimated, the discarded. People who reminded him of himself. Veronica funded part of it, not as charity but partnership. Judge Finch visited opening day. Finch. So this is your new battlefield. Samuel smiled. Samuel. No. This is where broken people learn they're not finished. Years later, Mia would tell her school class. My dad fought giants. They tried to bury him, but he learned to grow roots instead. And Veronica Lockridge would stand on stage at an innovation summit, saying, the greatest ally is not wealth, but someone who knows how it feels to fall and still rise. Samuel Rivera, the janitor turned advocate, became a symbol, not of comeback, but of redemption forged through courage. The city that once mocked him now watched in awe. Because sometimes the hero isn't born shining. He is carved out of failure, rebuilt by faith, and turned fierce by someone who believed in him. If Leonard Hale and Samuel Rivera's journeys taught us anything, it's that courage, truth, and resilience can rise from the most unexpected places. Every story on Echoes of Life Stories is a window into lives that fight, fall, and rise again. Stories that will move you, inspire you, and remind you why hope never dies. Don't miss the next tale of triumph and justice. Subscribe now to Echoes of Life Stories and join a community that celebrates the unheard, the underestimated, and the unstoppable. Your next favorite story is waiting, and trust us, you'll want to be here from the very first word.